Right. Let's talk about what being idempotent in software means. What is idempotency? Well, at its most fundamental, idempotency or being idempotent is the ability to receive the exact same set of data more than once and have processed it at most once. So you can receive the same message 2, 3, 4, 5 times, but your service will only actually process that message the first time it sees it, or function, whichever way you're implementing idempotency. So let's talk about what being idempotent is. So, idempotent. Let's imagine that you have a screen, and this screen is just a basic user input screen. So someone's going to give you their username, email address, and password, and then they're going to hit submit. Okay, basic screen, user entry, you've all seen them. Now, let's imagine behind the scenes, there is a imaginatively named user SVC. And this user service is going to save a record to the database, and it's going to send a welcome email. Okay, so save to the database, send a welcome email. So the user hits submit, record goes in the database, welcome email gets sent. Pretty standard stuff. But now let's imagine that there is an issue with the network, or there is a bug in the code, or whatever it may be. But hitting the submit button once actually sends the message twice. So this time we're going to do the same thing again, same set of data, remember. It's going to go to the user service, it's going to save a second record in the database, assuming no key clashes, and it's going to send a second welcome email. So you've received the same message twice, and you have processed it twice, meaning that the side effects, the record in the database and the email, have been done twice. So that's a pretty basic example, and probably not a whole lot that can go wrong there. So let's actually take a look at another slightly worse example. So let's imagine, again, you've got a website, so you've got a screen here, and this time we're on an e-commerce site, right? So there's a buy button, there's a whole bunch of details up here, and the person wants to buy an iPad. Okay, so buying an iPad from a website. Now imagine behind the scenes, there is a purchase service, so we'll imaginatively call it purchase service. And this purchase service is going to go off to the bank, and it's going to request the funds for the iPad. So it's going to say, I want £1,000. And the bank is going to say, sure, here's your £1,000. And when they receive that response, they're going to dispatch the iPad. So the iPad is going to be sent to the user, to the person who bought it, right? So imagine we're in the same scenario here. So hitting this buy button is going to send the same message a second time. Network issue, bug in the code, whatever it may be. So the user has clicked once, but we've actually got a second request that's gone across to the purchase service. Now, imagine this time, the second message also goes and requests that £1,000, and the bank also says, yes, have your money. And they then say, right, let's dispatch the iPad. So the user has actually wanted one iPad, but they have been charged and sent two. So this is a slightly worse problem, right? The user is actually affected by this. Money is being withdrawn from their account. They're getting products that they're going to have to return. There's going to have to be some back and forth with the customer services, etc. So how do we solve this problem? So imagine within the message that gets sent from the UI to the backend, you have, let's say, an address. Let's say you have bank details. And let's say you have a username. I don't know, doesn't really matter. Now, let's say that you actually also have an ID. So this ID, which is going to be a GUID, is unique to this message. So when it gets created, this message gets created with a unique ID. Now, next to the purchase service, you're going to have an idempotency database. So another database which stores your idempotency GUIDs. So within this message, you're going to process it in here. And the very first thing you're going to do is take the GUID, take the ID, and say to the database, have you seen this before? Is this ID already in the database? If it is, we've seen the message before, we don't want to process it again, we have already processed it. If it's not in your database, insert it in the database and go ahead and process that message. So this means that when the second message comes in, we say, we've already seen the GUID, we've already seen that ID, So we don't want to make a second request to the bank, and we don't want to make a second dispatch to the iPad. Now, there's a slight extra complexity to this, because usually if you read the message and put it in your idempotency database, you probably put it in there as read, and then once you've actually done everything within the service and you've responded back to the UI or the caller, then you might update that record to say it's been completed. So there might be statuses to your idempotency, but in the most basic situation, you just have an ID in a table somewhere, and it tells you whether or not you have seen or not seen that message before. So again, this is a fairly contrived example, but imagine you're writing a distributed microservices architecture and you've got tens of hundreds of services. If any of those process the message more than once, you could be in a whole world of trouble. So being idempotent and this particular way of solving it guarantees at most once processing. So you will process at most once the same message with the same ID. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Check out my blog where there's a full write-up of idempotency and a whole bunch of other software engineering information. So I'll leave a link to that below. Okay, thanks.